I have been a lifelong virtual reality fanatic, even back in the day when this wasn't the kind of thing that you could just go down to your local Best Buy and pick up right off the shelf. I'm talking about way back in the early 90s when I first started seeing this kind of thing on computer magazines and things like that. It was like science fiction, basically, right? One of my earliest gaming memories ever is of asking my dad to pay however much it was for some virtual arcade that showed up at our local mall. And of course, we couldn't afford it. So for years, I only had science fiction movies to go buy, right? Thankfully, that has changed. We have lots of options for virtual reality headsets, but when it comes to like the easiest one to recommend, there's basically just one game in town, the Meta Quest. In this case, the Meta Quest 3, their latest and greatest, or at least so far. At the time of shooting this video, there was some leak that seems to suggest that there is a Quest 3S coming out at some point in the future. Based on the naming scheme, I'm going out on a limb and I will assume that this isn't really a next step forward for the console, but rather a cheaper version perhaps to get a bigger chunk of the market, I suspect. That's a great idea if you ask me. All reservations about Meta aside, and trust me, I have plenty. The Meta Quest 3 is the easiest VR headset to recommend. I feel like we finally got to the point where I can wholeheartedly recommend a VR headset to someone. Not some kind of computer nerd, not some hardcore gamer who has tried everything and needs the latest and greatest. What I'm talking about is, I feel like this thing is seeing its Wii moment. I hope this makes sense. This is like our generation's Wii, I think. Anyway, let's talk about the Quest 3. Right out of the gate, you can see that I'm no longer rocking the standard strap. Though this thing is the most comfortable VR headset I've ever worn, the default strap is where Meta clearly has tried to save a few bucks when it comes to manufacturing these things. What I'm trying to say is that it's absolute dog shit. It's the worst. If you care about comfort in any way, if you are addicted to virtual reality, like I am, and you plan to spend a couple of hours at a time inside this thing, you're gonna wanna pick up something like this. This is the Bobo VR, which is a premium strap that also allows you to snap a magnetic battery here in the back. I have had the original one for the Quest 2, which is here somewhere, and it seemed like an obvious choice, especially because the battery I already had for my older model is compatible with this one, which means that now I have 2 Quests, 2 Bobo VR head straps, and 3 batteries. It's just great. I'm in the ecosystem, I guess, now. When they come out with the new one for the inevitable Quest 4, I guess I already know which one I'm picking up. So, I was talking about comfort. This thing is far more comfortable than its predecessors. The fact that it's much shorter like this, the headset itself is much lighter, much more compact, which means that you don't have as much weight strapped right to your face. The problem with the previous headsets is that they all kind of project outwards, about this much. And though it's not a solid piece of like wood or something, it's not like there's, you know, something so heavy on your face. It's plastic, it's, you know, not the heaviest thing in the world. You'd be surprised how fast this thing feels like it weighs a lot hanging from your freaking face. And it's not just the weight itself, but the weight distribution. This thing, it being much shorter like this, the momentum you pick up by doing this with your neck isn't quite as much as something that projects so much further from your face. And every time I have to pick up my old one to change a setting for a friend or something like that, I'm reminded of how uncomfortable it felt to have that thing rocking with my head. It almost felt like there's a bit of lag in the actual physics of the motion because I feel like I'm moving my head and then the headset kind of jiggles on my face because of how much it juts out of your face. This, on the other hand, feels far superior. But that's just comfort. The reason I bring up comfort first is because being a huge fan of VR, I always felt like the whole concept is inherently a little uncomfortable. I'm strapping computer screens effectively to my face. So I accept that it's not going to be as comfortable as saying playing on a couch, right? But the comfort thing has come a long way since the very first Quest. This thing feels so much better to wear on your face for an extended period of time. It makes it so that you're more encouraged to play longer sessions. The lenses also got an upgrade. They are now pancake lenses, which means they're flat, unlike the curved lenses of the previous devices. This makes a huge difference for image clarity because you don't get the so-called God rays, which are these visual effects that you get from when the light is scattering across the curved surface of the lens. You get what looks like light peeking from like behind a cloud or something. It makes people think of like God talking to you from the clouds, right? You get that. You look around and you get that on the previous models, not on this one. And the image is much sharper. You can't really see individual pixels anymore. Gone are the days of the so-called screen door effect. The PSVR, I bought that on like day one. I literally ran out of my house when I realized that my local Best Buy had one. I ran out to grab it. Screen door effect on that thing was massive. It's pretty much completely gone. I don't notice it at all here. And the other huge change are the color cameras for pass-through. For those who don't know, pass-through is a feature that allows you to see the real world with 3D elements, with game elements over top that video feed. It makes it so that it's a little similar to what something like the Apple Vision Pro does, but of course, the Apple Vision Pro is a much more polished experience. It's also $3,500, and as far as I understand, there's no real games for it. So, not exactly a mystery why it failed so bad, right? But this is a fraction of the cost of the Apple Vision Pro, so obviously it cannot perform in the same way. But you get, you know, an okay version of what Apple was trying to do. There are some productivity apps that take advantage of this, but working entirely inside this thing is still not super comfortable. Not because of the device itself, but rather because the apps that are being offered for that right now, at least the ones I tried, have some compatibility issues with some of the online tools I need for work. So it's interesting to dabble around with, but there needs to be a little bit more work done in that regard before this becomes an actual work tool. Not that I care that much about it because I already work on enough screens. I'm fine with this being just a gaming console. And it is an incredible gaming console. Earlier, I compared it to a Wii, and I see a lot of similarities, not just because it's white. Just like the Wii, this offers a different kind of immersion than what we're used to getting from the conventional consoles, and that is just more polygons, higher resolution textures. It gets to a point where it's just a really realistic animation playing on this rectangle hanging from my wall. I like the ability to feel like I'm inside that experience, even though the graphics look pretty crummy by today's standards. That is, I think, the biggest thing with VR. I sometimes feel, as a VR evangelist, that showing people gameplay footage from within the headset almost works against the technology, because since you're not seeing this in 3D, since you're not moving the field of view around you by doing the most natural thing you could do to look around, which is physically move your neck, you'd be surprised how much that tricks your brain into thinking you're actually there. Perhaps you wouldn't be so surprised, because by now you've all seen all the VR fail videos that all boil down to somebody seemingly forgetting that they are in their living room and then running headfirst into a TV or the fridge or relatives. That goes to show how powerful the illusion is, even though the graphics can look downright N64-ish at times. To those people I say, well, didn't you have fun with the N64? Don't you still have fun with the N64 today? What if you could literally get inside the game? That would probably be a lot of fun, and that's what you can do. And I mean that quite literally. One of the experiences I like the most in virtual reality is actually entirely free. VR chat, which is more like a social media / like a Roblox type of situation, in that the experiences you will find there are not always gameplay related. There's a social aspect to it that is really engaging. I should do a whole video on VR chat. I have lots to say about that. Suffice to say, this is my favorite way of playing it. Even though if I were to connect this thing with my gaming laptop, which you could do to access PC VR games that look much more impressive, I hate friction of any kind. If I have to like, oh no, I gotta install this thing on my computer. Now I gotta check out Steam. I gotta change the configuration. I gotta do this thing. Nah, I can't do that. I don't have time for that, quite literally. I'm shooting this video in between classes. Though the option is there, and I know a lot of VR fans swear by the ability to run these games, it doesn't entice me that much, though it's something you can do. Something else you can do that is kind of along the same veins is playing regular-ass 2D games, but on a massive movie screen. This is something you can do with an application like Big Screen VR, which allows you to watch movies together with friends. Again, there's a social aspect to the experience, But more interestingly, you can link your computer to your big screen in your Quest, and that means whatever you can see on your computer, you would see inside this virtual space. So you could work there having access to a full computer, right? Full Windows, full everything. You can play your games this way, you can watch your movies this way. Because I have 2 VR headsets, if I want to watch something with somebody, I can literally set up a movie theater. The ability to watch things in a space station or in a movie theater, it's pretty cool. I was playing GTA 5 this way the other day. It is really fun. There's a lot of native games, and I really only care about the native games, right? Like this whole connecting to the computer thing. Still on that note, and by that I mean playing games on the Oculus Quest that aren't necessarily running on the Oculus Quest. You can also play Game Pass on like a massive screen in your living room because, as I mentioned, the cameras now that allow you to see the real world when you're wearing this thing are much better than what we had previously with the Quest 1 or the Quest 2, right? They were black and white, they were really fuzzy, really grainy. The contrast was so sharp, it was like the images were all blown out, really distorted. It was awful, right? The image quality on this is nowhere near what you'd get from, say, the Apple Vision Pro, but it still makes for a great experience playing games in mixed reality. Be it Game Pass, you can project, your virtual Xbox screen wherever you want in your actual house, right? So I suspect that in the future, as these devices become cheaper and smaller and more accessible, I wonder if there will still be as big a market for flat screens, for big TVs, right? Because if everybody has something like this, wouldn't it be much easier to just carry your device to your buddy's house if you want to watch something? You put it on, and then maybe your device syncs to their Wi-Fi, and that gives you access to their virtual objects like a virtual TV screen, right? So we can just sit on the couch, put your thing on, and there's my virtual screen. We don't have to, maybe, I don't know. Is that too far-fetched? I don't think it is. I think once these things are really, really small and maybe under that, like if they get to like $200, I imagine, I don't know, man. Still on native games, which is really what I care about. Contractors, which is a first-person experience that is unlike any other games that I've ever played, while simultaneously, paradoxically, being a lot like the other games I've played before, because the biggest thing that I love about this game is that it has mods that are officially supported by the developers. And the mods are either weapons packs from games that you grew up playing, or even more interestingly, maps from said games. So you can play all your favorite Counter-Strike, Halo, Call of Duty, Star Wars Battlefront, maps, and many others. Because this is completely frictionless. Remember I mentioned earlier, what did I say?
If I have to, oh no, I gotta install this thing on my computer, now I gotta check out Steam, I gotta change the configuration, I gotta do this thing, and nah.
I hate any sort of friction when it comes to setting these things up. If I had to connect this thing to a computer and then log in like developer mode or whatever and download this thing from this GitHub that I don't even understand, like all of that, if I had to do all of that to play Call of Duty maps in that game, I probably wouldn't care as much. But the fact that it's officially supported, you click on the mod, the huge mod button, you download whatever you want, it's super easy to find. When you join a room and you don't have the mods that they're running, the game downloads them automatically. You don't even have to do anything. I love this. The gameplay is a lot of fun. Handling the weapons in VR. I have a whole video about this. That has legitimately replaced Airsoft in my life. It's just so much more fun for a bunch of reasons, so many. In fact, I have a video about that already. It's coming down. Don't worry, it's already edited and everything. I really just have to make a thumbnail. I hate making thumbnails. Mixed reality. I feel like people are not really paying enough attention to mixed reality. There's a game I play called Demio, which is basically an RPG, a tabletop RPG slash like board game type situation. You must have seen it. I post it on my social media all the time. In case you don't follow me on social media already, I thought you were my friend, man. What the f? As I was saying, Demio is one of my favorite applications of VR ever. It's a board game that now I can project on the physical space around me. This table right here, I can put this thing on and then just have the board right here. So I'm walking around my house and I'm picking up the pieces with my hands, mind you, because this thing has incredible hand tracking. So there are a couple of games where you don't actually have to use the controllers, and this is my favorite game to play, right? There's this card game element. I'm a huge, I don't have my decks here. I'm a massive Magic the Gathering nerd, and of course the game has a card game element to it as well. That's how you use the abilities and the spells for your little characters. And the way to access those cards is by simply doing this. The cards show up right above your hand, and then you use your other hand to pick up the card and place it on the board where you want its effect to take place. It is an incredibly convincing experience to be moving around in your physical space, picking up the die also with your bare hands. It's incredible. I was playing this game at one time while I was having a pizza with my friends, and the ability to just like grab food and then go right from that into interacting with a video game, but then go back to the food and then just look up and talk to your friends like that. Still very much engaged in the real world, but with this amazing sci-fi like 3D projection of a video game that you interact with by just using your hands. It's an incredible experience. What I'm trying to say here is that it used to be that to tell people to try VR, that experience seemed to come with a lot of caveats. There were a lot of problems with early VR devices. They were very much like a niche kind of, or niche, I don't know. Whichever one I use, there's gonna be people correcting me in the comments. So there you go, I used both. So I guess that means that both of you guys get to yell at me for saying it wrong, apparently. What I'm trying to say is that the thing is phenomenal. There's so much that you can do now with it. It's so much more comfortable. It is just a better experience overall. And mixed reality, the ability to put this thing on and then play games that are existing in your real environment. I feel like this is a much more interesting way to get immersed in a video game than just, okay, I want to play a PS5 game, so I want it to run at 120 frames per second with all the polygons and all the shaders and all the effects and all the whatever. Like, at the end of the day, it's still just a very pretty picture a couple of feet away hanging on my wall, right? This allows me to get inside the games, to feel a sense of physical presence in the same virtual space with my friends. It's incredible. Playing this thing, like I was traveling, as you might have seen. I don't know what order my editors will finish these videos, so I never know. I should stop using language like last video, next video. This doesn't make any sense to me now. For all I know, this video is coming out in like a month because I take forever to make the thumbnails. What was I even saying? I was talking about presence. So the feeling of being inside virtual reality, I was traveling a couple of days ago. Again, I was traveling, okay? That's all you need to know. I was traveling and I was at a hotel room and I decided to hop into an online match to play with my friends. And after playing for 2 hours, all of the ways through which you interact with people in virtual reality, and by that I mean like you use a lot of like body language because all that's being picked up by the way your head moves, right? Like you're nodding, you're shaking your head, you're kind of cocking your head like this when you're confused, you're shrugging, you're doing all of these gestures that communicate a lot, but would be lost if you were having this interaction in, say, a GTA 5 lobby. You see what I mean? You really feel like there's somebody around you, right? Having to like physically act like you're hitting a little radio here on your chest to communicate with your friends, this is much more realistic. It feels like you're actually hanging out with friends by having to perform all of these actions. At least that's how my brain ends up interpreting all of the stimuli. When you take that headset off after playing with your friends for a very long time and joking and, you know, doing all of these fun things that are only possible when you're actually existing inside the virtual world of the game with your friends, when you take that off and then you look around you and then you're reminded that you're just home and you're already home and safe. You didn't have to get an Uber. You're in your underwear the entire time, just like chilling, right? I actually low-key love that. I'm not some kind of crazy hermit. I love going out and seeing my friends and I love that. But I love having all of it. I love like having the experience where I have to go out and see my friends, but I also love that I have the ability to do that without leaving my house, including friends that live in other countries, in ways that would just not be viable, right? I love this. I love all of this. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the Quest 3 is incredible. Meta has lots of problems. You're not going to hear different from me, but this is worthwhile, in my opinion. Anyway, what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're into playing VR games together, hit me up. I love playing with the followers, the subscribers. So yeah, man, I hope to see you in these virtual. Have you ever read or watched Ready Player One? If you watch that movie, if you read that book, and you're excited about what's described there, we kind of already have that. It's obviously not quite as advanced as what we see described in the movie or the book, but it's close enough that it seems worthwhile to me. I love exploring these virtual worlds. Speaking of exploring, here's something that I really need to mention. I miss the days when there was this aura of mystery about video games. Now you can go on like GameFAQs or YouTube or whatever. It feels like everything has been explored, right? There was a time when video games felt a little bit like the Wild West, right? There's a lot to be discovered, so we don't know what's out there, right? Or when people first took to the oceans, right? You've heard that, right? Born too late to explore the ocean, too early to explore space. You were born right on time to explore VR, because right now it feels like it's uncharted territory. The application I mentioned, VR Chat, it's all user generated, right? So there's so much, and there's no documentation about it. It's amazing. Like, it's truly the only thing that gets me excited anymore in regards to video games. It's portable, retro, and virtual reality. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. That's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy, and I'm done.